Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! I can say Coffee Talk again instead of saying Coffee Talk. My singing voice is healed. I've been doing a little singing around the house lately. But today's Coffee Talk is on the topic of, is New York City going to be destroyed in a giant mega tsunami? Don't, don't, don't. I think that is entirely possible, simply because I've seen many documentaries about how that could happen. But the thing I want to talk about first is all of these people who are having these very vivid dreams of the end time destruction of New York City by a giant wall of water. These descriptions and accounts by people who have had these dreams are very vivid, they're very detailed, they're very disturbing. And it's happening a lot. Over the last 20 years, we've had many people from, your average granny who goes to church sometimes to men of God who have had these very vivid visions of the end of New York City in a wall of water. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you might have had a chance to go over to the community section where I post from time to time. And there I I offered up a short documentary film by scientists. This was up 4 years ago, before the current unpleasantness has caused the Ecological, if you know what I'm saying, to declare that what I'm saying is, fake news. But this is why I offered you a documentary from 4 years ago where university scientists from around the world talk about how the Palma volcano in the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain could cause a mega tsunami that would, in fact, cover up the whole island of New York and Manhattan in a wall of water that some say could be up to 100 feet high. That's a big deal. That's not fake news. That was a documentary that's been out for a while. There's several of those. When I first moved to Oregon, a friend of mine sent me documentaries talking about the Cascadia fault line along the coast of Oregon on the west coast, how that could cause a mega tsunami to flood the west coast, and how that has happened before historically. And I could do another video on a Coffee Talk on the Cascadia fault line as well, on the other side of the country. But just across the ocean there, at one of the closest points between Europe and the United States, off the coast of Spain, are the Canary Islands. In La Palma there's a volcano. Well, I will not attempt to pronounce its name. It's got a weird name. But people have been afraid that the next eruption of the La Palma volcano would cause a landslide, a separation of the mountain on the western slope of the mountain that would cause $500 million, I'm sorry, let me get that wrong, 500 billion pounds of stone and rock to fall off into the ocean. That's 500 billion pounds. That's an amount of rock that I cannot fathom, and probably neither can you. Let's just say it's bigger than most mountains around here. Most mountains in most of America. The side of that La Palma volcano can come right off and fall into the ocean. Currently, there is a ridge there's a break, a crack, a crevasse. There it is, crevasse. Drink coffee on crevasse. My English teacher girlfriend is really helping me to appreciate and expand upon my vocabulary. So this crevasse runs across the ridge of the mountain that is the island there that the mountain sits on. And the fear is the next eruption. And this has been a fear for many, many years, since its last eruption in the 1970s, that this crevasse that opened up along the fault line, along the ridge of the island, could kind of split the island. Right now, the fault line crack is so thick you can walk through it. And I wonder what it looks like now, because here's what makes this video kind of timely. Starting just a few days ago, it's been a week or so ago, the La Palma volcano in question started erupting. You can go online right now and see images of homes being covered up in a slow flow of lava And there's this line where everything on one side is normal and everything on the other side is a lava bed of molten rock. And as we speak right now, this volcano has reactivated. And at a time where many of us think we are already in the end times, could the events unfolding in La Palma in Spain on the Canary Islands, could that result in this potential landslide of 500 billion pounds of rock that would cause a tsunami from the impact of, just think about dropping a bowling ball into a bathtub. And that's kind of what you can expect. You're going to overflow the boundaries of the bathtub with the wave generated by the bowling ball falling into the water. So this rock figurative bowling ball is about to fall off in the ocean potentially over in Spain, which would cause a ripple effect, a giant wave to come across the ocean and flood most of the East Coast, depending on the angle of the generated wave. Some estimates say it'll hit the entire East Coast of the United States, or at least New York itself is going to be in big trouble, and potentially Florida as well, since much of that land is low-lying. A 100-foot wave would be devastating to the East Coast. Most of your cities along both coasts are built right on the water. People want to be close to the water. They want to be on the beach. Beach property is always the most valuable. And so barrier islands and coastal areas would be destroyed in this kind of tsunami in a way that we can't imagine. But the thing is, the big mega population cities along the East Coast are also fairly close to the water. A 100-foot wave would go many miles inland. The last time we had anything even comparable was the tsunami that hit Japan that caused the Fukushima meltdown that poisoned the water and potentially destroyed the salmon run on the West Coast. How many U.S. coasters have been catching salmon over the last 10 years or so? Yeah, nobody's got any fish stories. Yeah, they got stories about how they fish all the time and all they get is steelhead, maybe. So, tsunamis can be devastating. The after effects, as in the Fukushima meltdown, can be ecologically devastating to the world. It could bring other things to happen that you read about in the book of Revelations, like a third of the water of the seas becoming poison and killing all of the fish. That you could have many Fukushima meltdowns along all of these coastal areas where they might have slightly inland these nuclear, please don't make fun of my southernness. It's quite offensive. And last time y'all did that, we started a war. Just saying. So, yeah, the nuclear meltdowns along the coast, East Coast, is a logical next phase to some kind of mega tsunami disaster like the one we're talking about. So it makes me think, hey, is there some kind of biblical reference that might be tied to in an end times study to the destruction of New York City? And I keep going back to, I think it's Revelations 13, where it talks about the whore of Babylon. I'm teleprompter free, and the only Bible I carry around these days is the one up here, which I have much of it memorized. Not like some of my mentors, but I'm getting there as I age. But in the book of Revelations, there's a story, and you can find it when you just Google the destruction of the whore of Babylon. And in that description, to me, I've always seen New York City as the city in question that gets destroyed in one day. It doesn't say how it was destroyed. It just says that it was destroyed in one day. This great city, this city of Babylon, that sits on, I think it refers to it sitting on the waters. A lot of people think Babylon is the United States, and the whore of Babylon would be New York City. And so that image talks about how the destruction of the city is so complete that everyone knows that none of the fine things that were once there that it was known for will ever be available again. This city was known for its finance, its goods, this city mentioned in the book of Revelations that we're talking about. It might be called the Whore of Babylon, but this city gets destroyed, the great city. There's also a similar parallel in Nostradamus where he calls it the new city, and it gets destroyed in a single day. And it lists all of the things it's known for: perfumes, clothes, rich goods, rich people, wealth, opulence, plenty, excessiveness. And it talks about after the destruction of this great city, that the whole world will sit off from afar and mourn the loss of the great city. And then it says, no, never again will productivity ever come from this place. The tinker, people that make pots, the silversmiths, the jewelry makers, the cloth makers, the haberdasheries, all of these things that this place was known for, its great opulence and wealth, will just be no more, according to this tale in the book of Revelations. Revelation. There's many revelations in the book of Revelation. I get so sick of church people busting my chops. Really, this probably ain't the channel for you. Why don't you go over and see Perry Stone, or, I don't know, find you another Jim Baker character to cuddle up to. This old curmudgeon-y prophet in a mountain cabin is not your cup of tea, I'm sure. But back to the storytelling. So what about it? Is the book of Revelations telling the story of the eventual destruction of the city we call New York City? You know, everybody knows, if you're watching the channel, I'm in love. I have a new girlfriend. We're absolutely committed for life. We're not married yet, but we might as well be. The commitment's been made. It was a setup by God. God put us together. She's a viewer. She's my number one fan, and it's reciprocal. Like I'm her number one fan too. In every way, God paired me with my equal. My crazy and varied life is mirrored in her crazy and varied life. But she got to go to New York City, and part of me always wanted to go because I grew up with visions of New York City on television and movies, and some of my favorite movies were filmed there. I feel like I've been there, in certain key places, and there's a bucket list of things that if I ever went to New York, I wanted to see, like the Ritz-Carlton, Central Park. Uh, Back in the day, I wish I could time travel and just be a fly on the wall at Studio 54 and see all the excessive insanity that happened there. And thing about Catherine, she's lived a charmed life like mine to a great degree. And she got to do New York City right when she was active in the military. She was a linguist, analyst, stationed in South Korea, spying on the Hermit Kingdom. And so, yes, my woman's a former spy for the good guys. And but anyway, when she was active, she got some time off, and she has a sister that at the time was a supermodel. Yeah, my girlfriend's pretty, and she comes from a pretty family. And so her and her supermodel sister and all her supermodel sister friends took her on a tour of New York City when she came there, and she got to check off all those. She got to stand on the Empire State Building, on top of the Empire State Building. What a romantic moment, right? By herself. Um, she got to see all of the sites and the museums and go to the sites where movies were made. And she just got a first class tour, complete with a trip to Studio 54, where because they were just this group of hot women, they didn't even question them. The doorman just opened up the door and said, "Come on in, ladies," while other people stood in line for hours or sometimes days to get into that nightclub. My girlfriend back then, active military, but still fine in hotness. I can't do a video without talking about my girlfriend. Sorry, it's just how I am right now. But they just let her into Studio 54. Of course, she's a sweetheart, and she's always been a sweetheart. So she just went there, took in all the strange people, stayed there for a few, I don't know, an hour or two, whatever, danced a little bit, and then left. But she did get to experience that in its heyday, because that was back in the day. Catherine doesn't look it, but she's a little bit older than me. I've always preferred older women. My experiment with younger women was ill-fated and a wrong turn. I have found love, and I'm good. But she got to see New York, before it got bad, back in the day when it was still a good place to be to some degree. And some could argue it's never a good place to be. But and I'm not a New York file, but I do really love the culture and the imagery there that we see in so much of the pop culture that I grew up with. And so, you know, but the thing is, New York is corrupt. It's been corrupt. It's always been corrupt. Clear back into the days of the gangs of New York, you can see the corruption then. And it's not just what someone would call sins of the flesh. It's actual political corruption. It's victim crimes, against humanity, and it's just pervasive in the place. And it was reflected, unfortunately, in many of its people. And I've had a lot of friends from New York, but most of them were from Long Island, not from New York City. And recently, the governor of New York stood in a Brooklyn pulpit. And I got to play the preacher card for a minute. And I don't really care if you guys think I'm not qualified to make this statement. I've not been defrocked. You don't have the authority to defrock me. So until I'm defrocked, I'm a preacher. And I have the right to give you an opinion on something that's stuck in my craw. This governor of New York stood in a Christian pulpit. And in my opinion, the man that let that woman stand in his pulpit and say the things she said last Sunday needs to be defrocked and held accountable. He let a false prophet and a agent of Satan into his pulpit to preach a new religion. She called upon the people there, the smart ones that are vaxxed, to shun the rest of the people that aren't vaxxed. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this on my coffee talk. It's supposed to be non-political, but I can't help this because in so many ways I feel what this woman did was very much akin to, if not an exact duplication of something that eschatologists call the abomination of desolation. It's where somebody stands in the Holy of Holies and declares themselves God. The governor of New York, in my opinion, did this last Sunday in a pulpit in Brooklyn, where she was invited into a megachurch. She took the pulpit and she talked about how God is behind the vax. She talked about how God is wanting you to take this experimental drug, and that people that don't take it are sinners, essentially. And then she called on all of those peoples to be her apostles. That's the word that really got up all up on me. If she wanted to call them disciples, well, guess what? That's a word we can all use. But what many of you may not know, that I am a trained minister and words do matter. I am a priest, an educated one, and words do matter. And let me explain something to you. Apostles can only be designated by God. Many would argue that since Jesus died, and really it's not even God, it's Jesus Christ. Apostles are called by Jesus himself. To call yourself an apostle, you have to claim that you had a one-on-one personal interaction with the manifested body of Christ. He has to come in the flesh. You have to be able to have that moment where you reach out and touch his nail-scarred hands. And if you can claim that with a straight face, you can call yourself an apostle. But the only true apostles were those who actually knew Jesus, the people who actually shared airspace with the man while he was here on earth. And so no human preacher, nobody of any clout or office can ever call someone to be their apostle. Only God can call you to be an apostle. Anyone can call anyone for discipleship. I consider my viewers disciples in many ways. But I would never call myself an apostle because I've not had an interaction with the manifested in the flesh body of Christ. Like, I have not seen Jesus face to face, and I will not claim something that isn't true. At best, I'm a clergyman. Honestly, I'm just an old sage, which just means wise man. I don't claim any office anymore for myself. But when I see the church defiled in the way it was defiled by this New York State governor who stood in this pulpit, proclaimed this religion of vaccination, and called on these people to be her apostles of this new religion, to spread it to the people, that God wants you to get vaccinated. Really? You think God wants you vaccinated? The God I know wants you to have faith that you can tread on serpents and scorpions and drink deadly things and they will not hurt you. And that is the world I live in. That's the spiritual reality I live in. But this woman stood in the pulpit, declared herself God by saying she had the right to gather apostles. She'd said disciples, we might be better. And I honestly believe demons don't make mistakes. I felt as an exorcist that I was looking straight in the face of a demon speaking through the governor of New York. And she even had around her neck a necklace that said vaccinated on it. And she stood up and showed that off and said, see, this is my faith. I have faith in the vaccine. And I wear this vaccinated collar all the time, this chain that reminds me of the vaccine, you know, and this new religion she's pushing. And she's wearing that in place of where most Christians might wear a cross on Sunday at church. Instead of the cross, instead of standing in the pulpit and holding up a cross, she stood up in the pulpit and held up this false religion of the vaccine, and how only good Christians, that if you're not a good Christian if you don't take the vaccine. I don't think she used any religious terms correctly or rightly so. And I just got the feeling that whoever did that was just being a political person, just letting her in there for political reasons. And the whole thing was awful and sinful and worthy of judgment. Forget all of the sin, all of the corruption. That one thing the leader of New York just did is the kind of thing that could release judgment in the form of a tsunami from God. Not calling on it, definitely not hoping for it, but I don't need much coffee to swallow that. Could it be that the governor of New York just brought the entire state of New York under judgment in the things that she just did? Is that in any way, in your opinion, something related to the end times, where someone declares themselves a god, defiles God, invents a new religion and pushes it from the pulpit that used to glorify Jesus and edify the people? Do you really think that that your faith is being exercised when you go and take this experimental drug? I'm probably going to get in trouble for this video. Don't give a rip at this point. Look for me on Ray if I disappear from here. But I was appalled by what this woman did. I was offended as a member of the clergy, still in good standing, and as far as I have not been defrocked, and you don't have the authority to do it, so you're stuck with me. I and any believer have the right to speak on such things. I feel the authoritative obligation to speak up when I see the sacred pulpit of the church defiled by this woman proclaiming a new religion and a new faith. And to me, it was the abomination and desolation. To me, it was somebody standing in the Holy of Holies and committing a spiritual crime that could drag the entire state of New York down. I would never cheer at destruction, and you shouldn't either. I pray for God's mercy on this place. But with this Canary Island volcano erupting, with this prediction that 500 million tons of rock could fall off in the ocean and create a tsunami that would destroy the city of New York in one day, just like the story of the Whore of Babylon in the Bible, in the book of Revelation. We live in strange and interesting times. Coffee talk is supposed to be fun, but sometimes there's dark coffee talks. It's hard to joke around when you're talking about the destruction of someplace so big and so populated. But I would say that the good people are separating. This is something that is happening. People are moving away from those places where they're aligned with this new world order, where they're aligned with this new control grid. They're moving to places like Oklahoma, where it's more free, places like Texas and Florida that are in defiance of the government. And I imagine push is going to come to shove over the passport. But you tell me what you think. Is that the destiny of New York, to get hit by a wall of water? Are the scientists right now that say, don't listen to the scientists from 4 years ago, nothing's going to happen in La Palma, everyone's safe, there is no threat? Or are you going to go back before all this censorship and look and listen to what they said would happen potentially when the next eruption happened? Now, one thing we do have going for us on this whole La Palma Spain Canary Island thing, is that the kind of eruption that would cause that structure to fall off into the ocean is not quite the kind of eruption we're seeing. We're seeing not a pyroclastic or explosive eruption, but a slow ooze of lava. Now, sometimes that happens uh, as a precursor to a larger event. So everybody's watching what's going on there. The scientists are saying there's no threat. Nothing that's happened so far has generated energy enough to create any kind of tsunami. But what you're looking for is not an eruption and an earthquake, but a landslide caused by an eruption and an earthquake. The landslide itself will create that kinetic energy necessary to build the kind of tsunami that could destroy New York City. Well, I'm out of time and about out of coffee. I hope I didn't preach too much, but I just got to say, New York has done enough to fall under God's judgment, and may God have mercy on that place and those people. Till next time, on Coffee Talk! Thanks for hanging with me till the end of the video, y'all. I just wanted to share a quick note for you, for my faithful followers, that you can now support the channel through PayPal. The link is in the description. Through Patreon. If you joined there, I'm working hard on finding out how to create online content exclusively for Patreon. I'm going to have to do a YouTube tutorial video on it. That's probably on the agenda for today. And the Teespring store is underway. So soon you will be able to purchase Sage Wanderer gear with all of the great sayings that I've coined and phrases I've coined on the channel. And now you can wear that and make a statement for yourself. And that's coming to Teespring. That's not ready yet, but it will be coming this the month of October. So thanks for hanging for the whole video, and thanks for being a Coffee Talk fan, and thanks for your continued support.